Hey guys, Chris from Average Skate Reviews here. I know it's been a minute since I did a video, roughly 200 plus days. Now if you're wondering where I've been, it's essentially the same thing that happens with any recreational sport or hobby that you might be into. You can fall in and out of love with it, depending on who you're hanging out with. The weather plays a massive part in it. The last 8 to 9 months in the UK has been the worst weather I've ever seen. Flooding, raining, high wind. All of those three things are a perfect recipe to not want to get out on a skateboard and ride. Now, while this was happening, it kind of made me think about different things and obviously look back at what I've been riding, the videos that I've made, and I noticed something. At the start of making videos, all I ever went on about and banged on about was how bamboo decks are the optimal deck to be riding. It's the best thing for myself, and I felt a lot of other people out there as well. But just like any other sport you play, it's fluid. Your spec or your kind of setup is something that is constantly evolving and changing, excuse the pun. And that's based around your ability, where you ride, the general confidence that you have. All of these things alone will slowly start to alter and affect what you're riding on. Now, at the start, I loved bamboo boards. That was my main focus. But over the last few months, you guys will have noticed as well with the pictures I post on Instagram, if you're on there, handle will be down below. I've switched up and I'm using a lot more carbon boards. Essentially, I'm exclusively using carbon boards now. And that's because not only has my confidence increased, but the way that I ride has also adapted. Instead of kind of snaking through roads, carving the living life out of a board, carving like a crackhead, as I've said in multiple videos, I now prefer a lot of the times to just absolutely hammer it down a street. Now, that being said, a bamboo deck, as I said, had characteristics of a board that I loved. That kind of delayed, weird reaction that you get from the fact that the board is, the deck itself is much softer, it's flexible, it flexes when you're riding. It almost has like a delayed reaction when you go over bumps, when you're carving. And if you're riding the board in that sort of style, carving, sliding, it is perfect for that. But then if you're kind of just booking it hard, or you're riding off-road, or you're jumping off of curbs, that type of a setup isn't optimal for that. A carbon deck is essentially a lot more stable at high speeds. It also allows you to make quick kind of reactions and changes to your direction or whatever you're doing. The board itself is essentially, what I'm saying, a lot more reactive to any movements that you make. There's not that kind of delay and wobble and flex of a bamboo deck. Now, that being said, when you're moving at speed on even this board over here, it's not the fastest board in the world, but it does go fast. You want to be as stable as you can, especially if that's predominantly how you're riding. Of course, you can still carve. In my opinion, I prefer carving on a bamboo deck than I do on a carbon deck, but I love a carbon deck now. Even going over bumps, the fact that you kind of feel all of the vibrations and movements that the board's going to be making instantly. And also, if you need to make any fast twitch adjustments with your feet, you can do that instantly. I'm being drawn more towards that than I was towards the bamboo board, which, although the flex of the deck does absorb a lot more of the vibrations and bumps, it has that kind of delayed, snaky feel, which for one particular type of rider or riding style is optimal, and then for another riding style might not be so good. Now, the essential purpose of this video is to kind of like let you guys know that I've moved away from bamboo decks. I'm not saying that I'm not going to ride them anymore, but I just prefer to be on a carbon deck at the moment. And why? Because I feel like these are some of the things that you don't really get told about at the start. Of course, you get the basic differences between a bamboo and a carbon deck. With the Hadians, in particular from Evolve, it's going to be the size, dimensions of the board, how wide is that deck versus how wide is the carbon deck, in other words, versus the bamboo one, how long is it? Those are the subtle differences. The clearance underneath the board in terms of the ground, if you're going over pump tracks, dropping down off of curbs. Carbon decks naturally have a bigger clearance at the bottom of the board because there's no battery mounted to the bottom. Those are the basic differences that you get. But when you actually get on the board, when you ride it and your riding style adapts, changes and grows as you grow, these are the other subtle differences that you don't just get wind of through reading brochures and websites. But essentially, these are the things that you don't really know about until you spend a lot more time on the board. So for now, carbon boards are kind of where my head's at in terms of the way that I'm riding right now. Now, will that change later on? Probably will. And also, depending on what type of boards get released, that's also going to affect what I want to be on as well. But I thought it would just be an interesting topic and an interesting video to throw out there, because I feel like there's a lot of notions or comments about your riding setup being your riding setup. This is what I ride. I ride street wheels on a carbon board, and that's never going to change, but it does. And it's important to kind of get that message out of your head and try and experiment with as many different riding setups, riding options as you can to find what recipe works well for the area that you ride in, the country that you might be in, and also the people that you're cruising with, and also more importantly, the way that your confidence and your riding ability will change and grow and hopefully improve over time. All of these things are going to affect the way that you ride. So don't get locked into a particular setup because you think that's what's going to be the most optimal for yourself. Be open-minded to try as many different variations as you can until you see what works well for you. And most importantly, don't be afraid or put off to try something completely outside of your box because you think you might not like it based on what you've preferred. For the longest of times, I said how much I hated carbon decks. I didn't like the immediate reactions that you get from any movements that you make, the responsiveness, the stiffness of the decks. I didn't like any of that. And now all of a sudden, I'm a big fan of it. So hopefully you guys will kind of see where I'm going with this video. And if you've got any sort of pointers or comments that you might be able to throw in there that could help anyone that's kind of figuring out their feet in this world of electric skateboards, make sure you leave that down below. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. More content to come, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.